Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Tyler Schwanke. He's a writer, a filmmaker, and he has just begun with his first novel. Breaking In is his debut novel. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Morning. Thank you, Ajay. Nice to be here.
Same here. It's great to have you here on the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And not just in India, but a lot of people across the world will benefit from what we are talking about. We are going to talk about. We'll talk about the journey of selling a novel, and also we'll talk about your novel itself. So first, to understand from you, Tyler, you this is your debut novel. So how difficult, how easy it has been to pursue being a novelist, while doing other stuff, especially doing your filmmaking and writing other stuff.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's and that's one thing I think a lot of people that are not within the publishing world, the literary world, really understand is kind of how long this takes. A lot of times you like in movies and probably other novels, somebody knows a New York agent and they slip them that book, and 3 months later that book is on the bookshelves and it's a huge hit, right? And it takes a lot of preparation, takes a lot of finding, searching for an agent. Agent leads to a publisher. So for me, Breaking In is my debut. Came out about 4 months ago, but it's my third book that I wrote. And since then, I've written two more. So the first two books, I did the whole query process. For those unfamiliar, it's where you send out basically like a little blurb, a paragraph about your novel, some sample chapters, and you try to find an agent, somebody to represent you, to find a publisher. So for my first two books, I talked to probably over 100 agents for each. And, some of them read samples of it, some of them, liked parts of it, but for whatever reason, couldn't offer me representation. So it wasn't until my third one, and that went pretty quick, actually. So once I sent out my query letters, I got an offer for representation within 3 weeks. So I think that a lot of it just has to do with, what the project is as well. And a lot of times, I know for me, like with those first two projects, sending out and trying to find an agent, it was, every rejection kind of feels like, oh, I'm not a good enough writer. I'm not strong enough. And really, it's so subjective, right? It's just like, what does an agent feel like they connect with? What's, just what's a personal interest to them, or what do they feel that like they have already, what they're representing and they don't want to duplicate, or maybe they do. So it's really subjective. It takes a long time. So once I got an agent, this was about 2019. We started preparing for submissions. We started doing that at the end of 2019, early 2020, and then COVID happened. So then after that, right, everything just came to a screeching halt, and we didn't really do anything for about 7-8 months, because nobody was looking at anything. Publishing was kind of, with the rest of the world, was at a standstill. So end of 2020, beginning of 2021, that's when we started going back out, submitting, and then November 2021. So over 2 years after I got an agent, that's when we got an offer for the book. And then, so November 2021 is when, they verbally made an offer. We signed the contract February 2022. May 2023, over a year and some change later, that's when the book came out. So it's a really lengthy process, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm with a really great publisher, Blackstone Publishing. So the book is out on ebook, audiobook, and hardcover. I got to have a say in the cover design, which is kind of unheard of, especially for debut authors. I got to work with an editor. I got to select the narrators that read the audiobook. So it's been really full circle, but it's been a long journey, right? And since I finished this book in 2019 and took 4 years to get on shelves, I've been writing since then, right? I don't stop. So, so then I've got a couple others that we're submitting this fall. and then I work full time too. I have a day job. You know, I'm on the clock here in about an hour. So for me, it's always finding time to write. This is a major priority in my life. So I start writing first thing in the morning. I get up, breakfast, and then I go write for about 2 hours, and then I sign on for my day. So, you know, and then the weekends too, first thing in the morning. But I usually write for a couple more hours. But it's really finding that time, and you just have to make it a priority because nobody else is going to, especially if you're unpublished and you know you're trying to get your name out there.
Right, right, Tyler. So two things here. One is the as a person who is doing a day job,
Hmm.
how do they, think that okay, I should get into the creative side of my own self and get to writing especially. It is not like one fine morning you have written and that's it's over. It's continuous writing for
Hmm.
quite a so that needs it. So that part. Second part is the selling part because that also needs a lot of continuous hard work. What
Hmm.
would you say to people who are in day jobs? And also, even if they are very good writers, how to take this whole process of finding an agent, looking at this whole thing, and finally your book, living with the dream of that finally your book will get published by someone known. Otherwise, self-publishing is there, but then let's not go into self-publishing
Right.
at the moment. But how did you look at these things? How what was the motivating factor? What so that others can also understand from you in case they are looking at getting their books published from some good publishing companies.
Sure. So yeah, for me, self-publishing, yeah, it was always out there, but it wasn't that wasn't an option for me. Just that wasn't the end goal. You know, I read a lot. I read about 80 to 100 books a year. And I just felt, and maybe this was naive or whatever you want to say, but I just felt, you know what? I've read a lot of books that are better than books that I can write, but I've read a lot of books that aren't. And I feel that like almost those kind of like bad books kind of inspire me a little bit more just to be like, I could do this. Like you know, I could put a story together. It's my passion. It's something that I love to do. Um, I think as far as like having that day job and you know people that are trying to kind of you know motivate themselves to have that day job but also find a creative outlet. For me, I went from filmmaking in college, had some student films that played throughout the states, you know, and then I went and did some production work for about 6 to 9 months or so. And basically, you know, when you're working production jobs as a newbie, you know, you're working for free lunch and credit. You know, you don't get paid. If you do, it's not a lot. It's $50 maybe for a day. You know, it's not enough to get out of your parents' basement. And that's where I was after college. You know, I was living at home. Um, you know, and I had all the goals and aspirations that any person does when they're out of college. You know, I wanted to get my own place. I wanted to get married. So I, you know, found a temp job. I worked for a security company that translated into working actually for the staffing company, which led to a career in recruiting. And so right now I'm a healthcare recruiter. I've been doing that often, you know, for about 12 years. I really enjoy my day job. There's a lot of things about it, you know, working with like first responders that I find really motivating. For me, though, it's nice having a day job that's completely outside of the realm of my creative outlet, right? So there's no bleeding into it. There's no like, you know, wishing I was doing this other kind of thing. It's I go to work and I work, you know, my day job. I work 8 hours. I'm focused, but at the end of the day, I can sign off. I'm very lucky. I get to work from home now, but when I'm done, I'm done. And then I can go and, you know, finish any writing I might have started that morning. But that's also what motivates me is to do the first thing in the morning because I'm someone that I've just found over time that I don't like I don't like to write, or I'm not very good at writing after work, right? I'm kind of burnt out from the day. You know, I'm not very mentally stimulated. So that's why I like to do first thing in the morning, a couple hours. And then that way, when I'm when I'm working, I don't feel guilty that I haven't written today, right? I feel like, okay, I know it. I got my pages in, I've got my editing done, whatever it is. Um, and that's what helps me get through kind of that day job where I can really focus on that and not be wishing I was doing something else. So I'm very lucky in the sense that I do work remotely, so it's very easy for me to be able to write in the morning, do some more podcasts, have a nice conversation with you before I sign on. Um, when I used to have to go into an office prior to COVID, I got up at 5 in the morning, so I would be writing by 5:30. So I'd be done by 7:30. I can get into the office by about 8:15. And you just you have to be very motivated and kind of rigid in your structure. And again, I'll say this because nobody else is going to do that for you. So I know a lot of really incredibly talented writers that have been working on the same book for maybe a decade, or maybe have been, haven't gotten past the first 5 chapters in their book. And, that's because for one reason or another, they want it to be perfect, or they can't find the time. And, again, they need to make that a priority, because I just know that their books will be able to find an audience. But also make sure that you're sharing, your writers groups, you're getting outside feedback. And then as far as, finding, selling the novel, again, that's a really long process. Lots of ups and downs. You have to just stay focused, I think, on the writing aspect. So, the business side of this is I'm learning as I go. I'm found out, um, like podcasts, having a conversation with you. This is kind of a new avenue that the publisher has set up a couple book signings. They've done a really great job spreading the word. But, 4 months in, they have other books as well. And so it's up to you as the author to, continue pursuing, to get your name out there, to reach new markets, to really promote the book. And, that's something where I think it's a little bit different than, like, kind of like, let's say, the movie business, where you have a movie come out and everything, for the most part, I'm kind of simplifying this, but for the most part, it's about that, big weekend, right? You have a big weekend, make $100,000, and then you watch your audience kind of decline as you go and you leave theaters, right? And book selling, at least in my avenue, when you're a debut, I'm more of that, like, independent, movie that's in a couple of theaters, and hopefully word of mouth gets around, and then more theaters start to carry it. More people start, checking it out. And that's really how I've been looking at this is, okay, I'm 4 months in, the book is selling well. But for me, like, I just love having conversations with new readers, reaching new avenues, having people, come up to me and say, that book was a lot of fun. I laughed a lot. I didn't think it was going to be so funny. There definitely is a lot of humor and wit in the book, but it's a thriller. It's action packed, kind of checks all the boxes that I like to see when I read. And I also always think of my books in kind of more like cinematic terms as well. And, if this would translate into a movie, is it a movie that I would like to see? And yes, 100%. I think this would make a great movie, and it makes a great book. But at this point, in this stage, again, I have the publisher. I do have somebody that is promoting the book to sell the movie and TV rights. But to make their job easier, I have to do my part. I have to go out and promote it. I have to, let people know about it and help spread the word.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, in terms of your understanding of this whole business of finding an agent and publisher, uh, what is your understanding? What does a agent look for? What is that a publishing company looks for? Is it because you obviously reach out to those publishers who are interested in a particular style of book or genre of book? So obviously it's a given. But what is it that they look for? We hear stories about even top writers first getting rejected, decline, and then later on they become the flavor of the world, flavor of the nation, whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
what is it your understanding is that what do agents look for in a writer, in whatever one brings to their table, and also in terms of publishing houses?
Yeah. So A lot of that, I think, like from I'll talk about the agent perspective first, right? I think it kind of just depends upon where they are in their career. So my agent, when I signed with him, he was starting out. He was a
Okay.
newer agent, really looking to kind of build up his book of business, right? His client list. Um, and with that, I think there are pros and cons with having a newer agent, and he would tell you this too. This isn't anything as a surprise, right? So with a newer agent, he at first didn't have as many connections as like someone that's seasoned, right? If you get an agent that's been doing this for 15 years, has a long roster, they know, okay, this kind of book, action adventure, I can send it to this publisher, right? Or a romance, I can send it to this. They know what they represent, they know what their bread and butter is, and they know where to send it to. The downside of that is they're going to be a lot more subjective on which manuscripts they take, because you ask like what is an agent primarily looking for, and it's what, in my experience, and I'm not an agent, but what I've noticed is they're looking for what a publisher is looking for. So, and a publisher is looking for, to complement and duplicate, what has been a success for them, um, in the past. Or it seems they're just looking for celebrities because they just publish any kind of memoir. But I think really kind of like for the publishers, right? They're looking for, I know a lot of them are looking for a built-in audience, which was really kind of nerve-wracking for me because like I don't have 10,000 Instagram followers. I have like 300. I've got 2,000 on X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it these days. I like social media. I love promoting the book, but it's not like my main focus. It's not why I got into being an author. And there are some authors that are just fantastic at that. They go online a couple times a day, promote new content. And that's just not me, right? For me, it's about, the work, and the story. So I think at the end of the day, the reason why my publisher chose me was because, you know, this book that I wrote, Breaking In, is a love letter to Hollywood heist films. So there was a built-in audience there, right? People that enjoy heist movies, people that just love movies in general. But it was an interesting and a fresh perspective on kind of an old idea. And I think you hear that a lot, kind of put something, a fresh spin on an old idea. And a lot of that comes from finding an audience. Is if you have an idea that's completely new, um, you know it really really has to be absolutely fantastic to get attention, because I think from there publishers don't know where to put it, right? They don't know where to place it. One example is when I first wrote this book, my protagonist Millie Blomquist, I had her at 20 years old, and we heard from a lot of publishers, I don't really know where to place this book. Like 20 years old, that's not young adult. New adult is kind of a thing, but it's mostly like romance. And so, just like the sheer fact of age, like, had some publishers balk at it. So, about midway through the submission, I talked to my agents and I was like, what if I just take some time and rewrite this and make Millie 17? Right? None of the story really changes. Her motivation, her character, all remains intact. But now she's 17, and there's kind of new challenges that to add to the story, right? She's got her parents to deal with, she's at school to deal with, right? And it just made the book more interesting, and I'll again put a fresh perspective on it, right? Again, the heist movie genre, she's pulling off a heist, but she's 17 years old and she lives in Fargo, North Dakota. So how does she pull off a heist in Chicago at her age? So that to me presented a new set of challenges. It also helped incorporate an audience that the publisher could sell the book to, because once I made those changes and we started submitting it again, we got an offer, I think, within like 2 months or so. So it's really finding kind of that your place on the bookshelves that's already established, but presenting in a new way that's fresh.
Right, right. Now, in terms of dealing with a publisher, have you seen what is the impact of this self-publishing versus their sort of real-world publishing? Are they under any pressure, or is it that they have lowered the threshold that okay, these guys have another option of becoming a it can go into self-publishing. Have you ever felt it? What is your understanding while dealing with them? Have they mentioned it during your interaction with them?
I have not once talked with my publisher about self-publishing or anything that's been like an impact to them. I think it's different strokes for different folks, right? When it comes to self-publishing, I think some of the plus sides of that is you 100% get to control everything about your book. The downside is you 100% get to control everything about your book. So if you're not finding an audience, if you're struggling with marketing, that's on you, and there are so many different avenues to when it comes to marketing a book that I've learned about. Going back to kind of the social media aspect of it, right? There's book talk, there's book bloggers so when my book came out, about 60 book bloggers on Instagram and some on Facebook, but most of them were on Instagram and TikTok. They created videos, they promoted the book, they took pictures with the book, they read it and published reviews. And that was huge, absolutely, on spreading the word about it, but also, I got more followers out of it, not thousands, but I got more, which helped promote and get it out there. And when you're self-publishing, again, that's completely on you. What relationships do you have? How much of a base do you have? Because I'll tell you what, with me, if I self-published a book, I would have no way. I wouldn't know how to market it. It would be really difficult for me to get it out there. Um, you know, I kind of went through when before the book came out, you get advanced reader copies. So I went to the independent bookstores. I'm in the Minneapolis area of Minnesota. So I went to different bookstores around the Twin Cities and, just would drop them off. I explained who I am. I have a book coming out, Blackstone Publisher. Blackstone Publishing is my publisher. You can order through the normal channels. And about 50% of the time, I'd get somebody that was maybe just an associate of the store, right? They weren't the manager, they weren't in charge. So they didn't know what I was talking about. They thought that I was a self-publishing novelist that was
Oh,
coming in and hoping that they would sell my book. And a lot of them would say, "Thank you, we don't do that." I'd be like, "Nope, I'm not self-publishing. I'm creating awareness. I'm letting you know it's coming out and I'm local and I'd love to, come back and sign books or anything like that." And that works. I've done 2 signings already. I have one coming up this weekend. So that helps promote and get it out there. But at the same time, I kind of got a glimpse of what it was like if I was self-publishing and bookstores saying, "Nope, we don't take those," or, they only have so much shelf space that they won't take books that hasn't been, reviewed by like, Publishers Weekly or Kirkus Reviews. They want to make sure that they're getting what they consider, quality books. And I'm not by any means saying that self-publishing books are not quality books. I know absolutely they are. On the same side, having a publisher behind you absolutely does not mean that your book is quality, right? We've all read bad books where we're like, how did this get here? So I'm not saying it by any means, but I can see the different challenges when it comes to self-publishing, and for me, that's why it was never an option. I think I just wanted to. This was a goal I had for myself: get my book out there, partner up with a publisher and, give that a serious go.
absolutely, absolutely. So this book of yours, Breaking In, is about a heist movie. So is it why did you choose it? Is it because that at that point in time, Money Heist was at the top or something like that? People know about
Sure.
heist movies mostly about perhaps Money Heist. I may be wrong. I don't know. I watched a couple of episodes of that, but not the full one.
Sure. Money Heist is great. Yeah, I did. I love that series. So for me, it started with the character. It started with Millie. She is an aspiring filmmaker. This idea has been one that's been ruminating for about 15 years. I had the idea. I was a film student in New York, came back home to Minnesota, ended up getting, a day, finishing out college, but then again, after, 6 months, a summer of production work, I went and got a day job. And so it started really with her and kind of the idea of this film student out of school, really struggling to get her movie made. And at first, it was going to be that because I was working for a security call center. So, I had this idea. I never acted on it. I had an idea, right? Like, okay, what if I were to, I don't know, go and, use the security codes to go rob a place or something, and take that money and make a movie. So that was kind of like at first where the story was. And then it was, well, that's really hard to care about a character like that, right? That's randomly ripping off stores. So it kind of evolved from there. And then I was thinking about what kind of movie does Millie really want to make? And, horror movies are usually, not always, but usually kind of a director's first movie because, again, there's a built in audience there, right? Um, so I had this idea, and then it kind of evolved. Well, what if it's about a heist movie? What if she's trying to make a heist movie? Because a lot of directors, Wes Anderson, Guy Ritchie, Quentin Tarantino, they all made heist movies for their first movies to really, and that helped introduce. And again, there's a built-in audience there. So once I kind of focused on that, then it all really kind of became about heist movies and my favorite kind. So you have like the Ocean's 11. You have the crew with all the special skills, and those are fun, absolutely. For me though, I found I really loved kind of the underdog, down their luck characters who turn to crime for one reason or another because they feel stuck. And this is kind of a one job that's going to change their lives. And that's really kind of translated to Millie and her film crew. She also was ripped off. So, quick synopsis of the book. Millie goes to a film school in New York where there is a competition. You submit a feature-length script and you make a short film based upon that. And then at the end of the summer, the winner of the competition gets $500,000 to turn that feature-length script into a full movie. Well, the school goes under because the guy, Ricky O'Neill, who runs it, is arrested for fraud. He's been stealing from the students. 7 months later, Millie is in Fargo, North Dakota in the dead of winter. She's in a movie theater. She's watching the upcoming attractions. She looks up and she sees the preview for a movie that's directed by Ricky O'Neill, and it's absolutely 100% her movie. He's stolen her idea, and the way that the school is set up is she can do that. She goes to him, asks for credit. He refuses, but he gives her $20,000 in hush money to just go away. Well, Millie doesn't do that and says she takes that hush money and recruits her film crew, makes them a heist crew, and then plans to steal the movie 3 days before the premiere. So it kind of just evolved from Millie and her goals. And then kind of once I had focused on, okay, this is what she needs to do. And she's a filmmaker. So this is how she would approach it from basically the movies that she studied. It kind of took on this level of, meta, kind of like Scream, how, in Scream, it's kids that love horror movies are in a horror movie. Kind of the same thing. Millie loves heist movies. She was wrong, so she kind of finds herself in a heist movie, kind of using those roles. And then she finds out, pretty quickly, this isn't a movie. This is real life, and she's way over her head. So, so it just kind of evolved, from there. Again, heist movies and heist, there is that built-in audience there, but it's from a different perspective.
Right. I'm sure a lot of people would like to know more about this novel and maybe want to buy it. So, what's the best way for them to do so? And also, Tyler, in case they want to get in touch with you, maybe some filmmaker wants to make a movie on your book. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to do a quick hold it up. There it is.
Yeah, show it. I'll just give you this bigger screen. Let me show it. Yeah.
So this is it. Blackstone did a beautiful job with it. One thing I like to just promote is it's got this beautiful cover when you take it off, just on the hardcover. But this is available wherever books are sold. So you can get this, off Amazon, bookshop.org, or just ask your local bookseller to order it for you if they don't already carry it. And then it's available on Kobo, Audible, excuse me. So there is an audio book. We have 2 narrators that do an absolute fantastic job. They're really funny. They're really it's not until you have someone read your book to you that you realize how many characters you have in a scene, because Millie and her crew, there's 4 of them. And then there's like some professional criminals that kind of take over towards the end, towards like the middle of the book. And so at some points there's like 9 characters in a scene. And Jessica Walensky just does a great job of, just all of a sudden just going through them all and changing her voice. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I did this to her, poor woman. But she absolutely nails it. So an audiobook, and then also ebook too. So your Kindles, your Nooks, anywhere like that. To get a hold of me, you can just go to my website. It's Tyler Schwanke. It's TYLERSCHWANKE.com. Stop by. There's different pictures from events. I list my upcoming events, list my podcasts that I've been on. And then also there's down at the bottom where you can reach me. You can email me directly. If you have any inquiries about me doing any guest visits or a signing, you can reach out to my publicist. And if you are a filmmaker that would love to learn more about, the rights to it, Chip Rice is my agent, and his contact information is there as well. So you can email Chip about that.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.